Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful day, and wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world. Thank you, as always, for engaging with our content. Thank you so much for all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much to our amazing sponsors, EduAid, Book Creator, Yellow Dig, and our newest sponsor, Peelback Education. Thank you all for your support and bringing some great conversations into our education space so that we may continue to learn and grow together. And today I am excited to welcome a wonderful guest. His name is Kyle Sumrow, and I had the opportunity to meet Kyle at the Tech My School conference. If you've heard Tech My School, you've probably are familiar with Robbie Cobbs, who was recently a guest on the show too as well. But I would love to welcome Kyle to the show. Kyle, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Fonz. Appreciate it. Love your show.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for reaching out and saying like, "Hey man, like I want to be on your show and I've got some great stuff to share." And I'm really excited about that because as you know, this is what we do here on our show. We love to just find some amazing educators, professionals, builders within the education space that are creating solutions for some of those problems or little things, obstacles that we may run into on our day-to-day and operations as well. So, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me today. So, Kyle, before we get started and we dive into the meat of the matter as far as
Mm,
relief roster, because we'll be talking about that, Kyle, can you give my audience members who are not familiar with your work just yet a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education
sure.
space?
Yeah, sure. Um, so I started my teaching career in Minneapolis as a school bus driver. I think we've all had that same start, right? I had this very random, circuitous route into EdTech, but started substitute teaching for that school and realized how much I loved teaching. So my bachelor's degree is in music. I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, got a degree in audio engineering, and then technically music production and engineering. Great program, was looking for work and found work as a school bus driver while I was looking for work in recording studios, and actually decided to change gears totally because I loved being in the classroom. So St. Mary's University of Minnesota, shout out to my peeps in Winona. Um, I ended up getting a teaching license, 512 life science. We were just laughing off air too. I went back to school, for like an additional, 65 undergraduate credits in life science and other sciences, and ended up teaching basically everything except for science during most of my teaching career. So I've taught mostly computer science and digital media, filmmaking, course on media bias was really interesting. And was a tech admin, right? So was head of technology at several different schools all over the world, actually. So been in 5 countries. First overseas post was in Cameroon, in Yaoundé. After that, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, at the American International School of Jeddah, then to IS Bern in Bern, Switzerland, and then actually back to Minnesota for 1 year to finish my master's degree. That's a funny long story about how the provost contacted me and said, "Your credits are about to expire for that master's you started 12 years ago or something." I was like, we should probably go home and finish that. So I finished my master's and then went to Vietnam after that, came back to Houston, back to my hometown, came to Episcopal High School, was the director of technology and innovation here in Houston at Episcopal for 5 years, and now have gone full time with Tech My School. So if you didn't hear the interview with Robbie, you should listen to it. But Robbie's one of my closest friends and is one of the most inspirational educators I've ever met. Has such a fascinating background, and he and I worked together in Saudi. Actually, that's how we know each other. And we started doing some work together in Saudi that he really took on board and kind of ran with and turned it into this amazing assessment tool that we use to assess schools. When we go in to start a relationship with a school, we basically start off with helping run them through a self-study that is a really great non-judgmental way for them to self-identify what they want to do, what their vision is for technology. And so I'm working with him full time now, because when he came to Episcopal, we had him come in and do that assessment with my team. And I was completely floored by the results of what we found. And I think in my ego, I was thinking, now, what's this guy? Works with these schools in Puerto Rico. What's he going to be able to do for us? We're this big, high-powered, high-achieving really fantastic private school here in Houston. And we learned a ton about ourselves. We learned that we did have, it really amplified the good that we were doing. But then it also pointed out a few things that we had never thought about before. So I think that's the beauty of the whole process with Tech My School. But yeah, so that's where I am now. I'm the director of outreach and development for the organization. I help to raise money so that we can essentially take on as many schools as we possibly can in Puerto Rico. So yeah, it's been really great. And the reason I'm really on here talking to you is about software, right? And software design has been just something during my career that I have been able to use to solve problems for schools. And problems come up, and when you're sort of like mired in it, when you're in the weeds, working through these problems in schools in real time, it's really helpful to have a skill set to be able to generate pieces of software that are totally useful for the schools, right? That can systematize and automate some of the processes that schools struggle with.
And that is fantastic. I mean, Kyle, like I got to meet you at Tech My School, and it was just fantastic. I think you had just come on board there too as well. So it's great that you are working with Robbie, and I do agree, Robbie is definitely kind of like on a whole other level and even sometimes wavelength. But he is fantastic. Like you said, he definitely has a heart for education, and he's definitely doing some great things. And today I'm also thankful that you get to be on the show too as well, and talking a little bit about, like we mentioned prior to the
Mm.
show, this may, like you mentioned, he's like, well, it's just some software, it may be like unsexy software, but sometimes I say
Totally
like,
unsexy.
yeah, totally unsexy software. But you know what? It's like sometimes what we think and what you may think that is unsexy could be something that is potentially something that is great. And the way
Yeah.
that I learned about this obviously is that you reached out to me, but seeing and hearing a little bit about what this can do, I think that this is something that is great as far as, like you mentioned, creating systems or having systems within your schools to be able to do certain things. And today we're going to be talking about relief roster. So I want to ask you, before we really
Mhm.
dive into, what really, is relief roster, when you'll demo this for us and everything. But I want to ask you, in your educator mindset, and again, very interesting background, going into from Berkeley, school bus driver, and then becoming an international teacher, and then, being a tech director and innovator, or innovations, or tech director and innovations, I think you mentioned at Episcopal
Director of
School.
Technology and Innovation was
There
my,
you
yeah,
go.
that was my role at Episcopal.
There you go. And then Episcopal, and now at Tech My School. I mean, you have seen education from some amazing lenses and also getting different perspectives. So I want to ask you, where did this idea of relief roster come from?
Behind every classroom door, there's a story of patience, creativity, and the quiet power of shaping the next generation. Peel Back Education shines a light on these lived experiences, the real voices of educators on the front lines. Don't just subscribe to Real Voices, discover them, connect with them, and maybe even share your own too. Visit peelbackeducation.com to discover the stories shaping education and the people just like you living them every day.
Yeah, I would say it came from a pain point that is, it's almost like that death by a thousand paper cuts sort of a scenario. It's something that every school deals with.
Mhm.
And public schools have, there's a couple of pieces of software that exist that are very, very expensive, that do some of what this product does. So my product is a little bit different now. So I'll explain some of the things I didn't tell you before the show about what it does now. But um, I was really shooting for something that schools who are under-resourced would not be, scared out of the market, basically, just because we had this great product. Wow, they're really excited, but they can't afford it. I don't want that to ever be the case. I don't want anyone to say no because they can't afford my software. If they say no, it's because they already have a solution or they just love pain or something. So in schools, back to your question, the schools that I had worked in, by and large, they were resourced very differently from each other, right? Some huge budgets and some way less, but they all have the same problem. And to me, like that's a signal, that's a red flag that something needs to be created. If all of these schools have similar issues, then why is there not a solution for it? And so I was in a position where I'm a total nerd. I love spreadsheets. I've always loved spreadsheets, and I'm good with spreadsheets. And that's something that's like when you know how to change change the brakes on your car, you try not to share that with anyone because then you're going to get calls about, I'm change my brakes. The spreadsheet thing, maybe a little different, but I would say that a lot of the ways that I solve these problems, if you're familiar with a Rube Goldberg machine where you create something incredibly complex to solve a simple problem, that's how my spreadsheet solutions started to feel at some point. I mean, you could ask some of my old colleagues. So like, if somebody types the wrong thing in the wrong cell, it destroys this whole cascade of spreadsheets. And I thought, this is just untenable. Trying to I would create something that worked, but like nobody wants to look at a spreadsheet. So then I first started developing by creating web apps. So I was creating web apps using Google Scripts to be able to interface with Google Sheets. And every listener, by the way, just fell asleep as soon as I started saying that. But I got to the point where what I realized was users don't want to look at spreadsheets because they don't love them the way that I love them. So I was able to create an interface that was super simple for people to put in information and it would populate the spreadsheet. They never had to look at the spreadsheet. They don't even know there's a spreadsheet, right? So out of sight, out of mind for them. They're like, oh, this guy created a solution for this thing and it seems to be working. The fewer people that were actually like able to mess up the code in my spreadsheets, the better for me. But I also still felt like there needs to be an actual interface for this that works, that's functional, that's beautiful. I taught design. It was one of the things I love. I love design, right? I hate it that we refer to STEM and not STEAM because the arts piece, that design part is absolutely essential. I would challenge you to find, one of the, big tech company CEOs who is not very in tune with the fact that like UX, UI has to be on point in order for people to enjoy using your product. Your product can be great, but if it looks like a website from 1998, nobody's going to use it. So, so I guess that was a long answer to a simple question. But I like solving problems that people have. And I find that software is a really interesting way to be able to go about doing that.
There you go. Now, Relief Roster. So tell us with Relief Roster, what is the pain point? Because I know we talked a little bit right prior to the chat, and I have seen it plethora of different ways that many school districts handle, substitutes, because that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
But I thought that it was something that was very unique in the way that Relief Roster can help set up the process and make it very customizable, where it's not just kind of like the next sub that's on the queue, or when you call the sub, it's like, well, they didn't want the job, so it just skips over. But now you can actually, what I love and what I can see this, if I'm in charge of this, at my campus or district, I would find obviously my pool of substitutes and then be able to divide them up by skill sets, divide them up by knowledge base, divide them up in a certain way where now I can be like, okay, for this situation or for this other situation, now you can really customize that. And at the campus level too, be able to do that too. So now that I gave all of that away and
you don't even need me anymore.
Yeah, it's like, all right, see, it shows that no, tell us a little bit about that and how, and the mission or the vision of Relief Roster in helping districts.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the customizability part of it, because when I first started designing it, what I realized is that I'm not the owner of, I don't have knowledge of every context that's possible with a school. And I will tell you, like, with the first 10 clients that are using it, every single one of them has added to it over the last 6 months, has said, hey, our schedule looks a little different. So I realized, okay, the scheduling tool, in order to set up the schedule, every school's got a different thing, right? I had it set up so you have like a standard, say 7 or 8 period day, and then a block schedule, and like alternate them. And I realized that every school has such a unique context to the way that they need scheduling set up. So the scheduler was really the first piece where I was like, okay, this thing, the system setup part is everything for the user experience. So when we go about doing the system setup, it is so complex now that it's me walking like a system admin through it and getting it set to their context. And then after that, they don't have to think about the complexity anymore. It's really simple for them. So it has that in common with that sort of spreadsheet example, right? That it was a little too complicated for most users. And I would say that this is also very, very complex. But once we've gotten it set up so that no one has to look at that really, really long, system setup section of the app, it's super clean and straightforward and really easy to use, and it's wired up to communicate, and it's customizable for almost every context. So one context, I had a school recently that came to me and said, listen, I really like the scheduling thing, but that only gets us through the first trimester, because then we completely change our schedule for the second trimester, and then we completely change it for the third trimester. And so I had to make the ability to create something we call time blocks, where you have all the scheduling tools, but now you can actually use all those tools within one block of time and then create a new block of time to do something completely different, and then build your whole year that's in a totally customizable way. You can create as many different divisions as you want. So from a district standpoint, if a district was going to roll this out, they would be able to accommodate every random customizable schedule for, all 10, 20, 40, 100 schools that they have. So for school districts, it gives you the ability as a system admin to be able to see everything across all of your schools. But at the school level, you have different roles, right? And so your system admin sees more than your educational administrator, is the role that we would give to a campus principal. The principal can see everything happening at their school, but they can't see things going on at the other schools. So it's designed to ultimately just be customized. And funny enough, it was actually designed for independent schools, because that was my background, was international and independent schools. So my context was very K-12 and multiple campuses within one K-12 system, but usually a maximum of, let's say, 3 campuses. So when I started thinking about the U.S. public school district and campus setup, that was when I had to really start expanding the ability to customize the platform.
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fobbs from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg smash it. I mean app smash it with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code My EdTech Life for a 3-month special treat.
Great. Well, Kyle, one thing that I do like, though, like you mentioned, is that analytic component too, as well, where, you can differentiate who has access to what. So one of the things that I can see that being an advantage, not only director CTO, but I mean, I'm assuming the HR would be able to have access to that and see, obviously from the pool of subs, because I think that is one of the biggest things right now, is just being able to find substitutes, but not only that, but be able to note that you can, what kind of schedule and which subs are being selected more often, and maybe just to be able to see that and see the analytics behind it and say, okay, well, why is this particular sub being selected more for, let's say, this math class? Is it because they do have a math background and they're able to provide instruction or provide support for students, or the different skill sets that they may each have? Because as you know, some subs are former educators, some subs are aspiring educators, and then of course you have some subs that, they sub, but it doesn't mean that,
Retirees or whatever.
retirees, but they still have a certain skill set. And one of the things that I find that is interesting is to be able to have your wonderful pool of subs from the beginning of the year, be able to have them and then analyze, okay, which subs are doing more stuff for specific schools. And, so there's a whole wide range of things that you can look at, but just the fact that you're able to streamline the process and manage those absences and scheduling the substitutes and having that placement, I think that's something that's great. Now, I want to ask you, because I'm not too in depth with that, but because you are and you were a school leader and you're seeing this, is there, through being able to streamline this process, is there a cost savings for the district that you see, or maybe that the schools that you work with, that it really helps them out in that sense?
Yeah. So it's with Tech My School. So sorry, step back just a little bit.
Mhm.
So Tech My School is sort of like a fully licensed reseller of the product. So because I work for Tech My School, uh, I'm able to promote my own product, and all of the proceeds actually are going back to Puerto Rico. So any of the proceeds that come from the platform are going back to serving the kids that we serve, which I love, because that's a way that, I can give back too. Um, you mentioned HR in there. So if I could pop back to that
Yeah,
really quickly,
yes.
there's actually an HR role in the platform. There's a sub pay, that's one of 4 modules. So there's 4 modules. The first one that we talked about is a substitute teaching. There's also an absence and PTO tracking module. And then there's a sub pay module, which only HR has access to. And then there's a volunteer onboarding and event management piece, which is the newest part of it. So I wanted to make this so that a lot of the schools that we work with they're like a religiously affiliated schools, Catholic school or something like that, and they'll have a school and a church. And so I wanted to create a product where you could use that for all of the employees, right, for the absence and PTO tracking. Then the school part of it uses the substitute piece, and then the volunteer management part is generally like on the church side. But independent schools and even public schools do a lot with volunteering anyway, right? So the platform was designed to really be kind of a one-stop shop for that. Any time where there's like an event or some sort of an opening and you need to put a person into that event, I wanted the platform to be able to handle that. So get me back on track with your question though, because I took a little buggy ride.
Yeah, no, but that's great, because it kind of, it's a nice segue into that volunteer piece as well. And well, I'll get into that too, because I think that that's something that is great, because I know oftentimes that we might have some parent volunteers, and obviously through those parent volunteers, there's a vetting process. You make sure you do
Mhm.
background checks and all of that, but just to be able to put them into a system and to be able to, it's like, they sign up and things of that sort, for HR to be able to keep track of that. I think that's something
Mhm.
that is fantastic, and that's
So
great.
if I can I cut in just for one
Yes,
second? I
yes.
would say that so the subbing and the volunteer piece, they both have something really unique in common, which is the onboarding process, right? Because I already had the substitute onboarding process done. All that coding was done. And so what I was able to do is sort of transfer some of that same logic over into the volunteer section. So when you have these events for parents, you have a custom URL for your school that you send to them, and it sends them whatever customized version of the onboarding form you want them to fill out. It lets them put in custom fields, anything you want. But like by default, it's like contact information, skills, availability, that kind of thing, what things they're interested in. And then like a place for a narrative where they can just type in notes. Hey, I used to do, say, accounting. If you have anything that's, you want me to do something with spreadsheets, I'm good at that. Or, hey, I used to work in X, Y, and Z industry. So, and then the volunteer section, also the volunteer management page also lets the volunteer manager search by skills and by availability and by all the different things that they put into the form. Each one of those has a process. So if you are a volunteer and you fill out the volunteer form, it puts you into the pending registrations bucket, and whoever is assigned the volunteer manager role, and the sysadmins can actually see this too, but they would go in and they would look at, hey, we've got 3 of these, and they'll look through all the information, and then they can create a custom onboarding checklist essentially. And you don't have to fulfill all of that before you approve and onboard, but it gives you the option to do that. So like, have they had a background check, and I can upload files, I can upload like evidence of their background check. Have they been to like an orientation meeting? Have they uploaded their driver's license? Have they done like all of these different pieces? And it has a progress bar for them. And so at a quick glance, you can look at the pending registrations and say, hey, this guy's almost done. I'm actually going to reach out to him, and just, if he can just give me a copy of his driver's license, he's ready to go. And then you can do, I haven't added this yet, but there's a company that I can have the BSA background checks done straight from the platform. And then the school would just have to pay for how many ever they used every month. I forget, it's a few dollars, I think, to run them, and they run quite quickly.
Oh
So
my
that's
God.
it's another piece. Like you're on, I wanted it to basically just be the easy button for onboarding. Anybody comes on this campus, here are our requirements. We can customize what those requirements are. Have they gone through the training? Check, 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 check. Now I can onboard them. And as soon as I approve their pending registration, they go into the directory. So they've got a substitute
My
directory
gosh.
that then now they're actionable. And there's a whole communication portal in there as well. So if I have a volunteer opportunity and I want to pinpoint all the people who have a specific skill, like maybe you say food service. Hey, we're doing a pancake breakfast. We want somebody who has experience with food service. I mean, not that any parent couldn't come in and flip pancakes, but whatever the thing is that you want, you look for that skill. And then you're able to communicate with the people. You're like, hey, I want to create this message for all the people that say they do food service, or they do, AV support, or they love doing dishes. Whatever the things are, you can create all of those different skills that you want them to be able to fill out, because that form is totally customizable.
Right now, you are speaking my language just in everything that you've described. And the reason I say this is because oftentimes, there's already like kind of platforms that are in use. But what happens is sometimes those platforms, number one, they don't offer pretty much everything that you say. It's almost like bits and pieces. And then there's another platform that needs to, takes some of that info in a different way. And then, of course, like you mentioned, the onboarding process and all of that great stuff. But like this truly, is and it really does feel like that easy button where everything that I can think of that would be needed is already there. And that's one thing that I love, that as somebody might be interested in coming in to your district to, like you said, either sub or be a volunteer, going in through that, like you mentioned, they fill out a URL, your customized form for your district, your school, whoever's going to send out that form. They upload their documents. They say, okay, now here's the training dates for, maybe it's going to be Tuesday, Thursday for sub training that we come. So you show you the tech or things of that sort. You check that box off. It's already in the system. So then you're able to, like you mentioned, at a glance, see who is almost readily available and then follow up with your subs. Because I think sometimes what might happen is that people might be interested, but the way that the system kind of works, because there's multiple people that do multiple things, kind of one person bogs down the process, then that doesn't get through. And then there's a sub shortage, or maybe that sub says, well, you know what, maybe they're not interested after all. And then they end up going to a different district, and you lose out on somebody that might have had some wonderful skills that could have been able to be used within your district for classroom.
Onboarding's such a long
and onboarding.
process.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be. And sometimes there's that lack of communication where, well, we got them onboarded. Oh, but they don't have their account yet to be able to log into the substitute system. And I'm thinking to myself, I was like, what can we do to streamline that process? And I think, well, from what you're telling me, I'm already like, oh man, I'm sold. I'll take 5. Let's do it. And I'm not even in charge of that. But this is great, because you're walking us through real life scenarios. So if you'd like, Kyle, at this time, I would love to see. And I know that our audience members would love to see the platform.
Yeah.
So if you're able to share and kind of walk us through whatever it is that you'd love.
The whole thing is integrated with Google and Microsoft SSO as well. So most schools are using one or the other of those. And then the calendaring stuff all works too. Like, it's integrated. If you just tick all the boxes for Google Calendar, like your Google Calendar it can be integrated. Every time you sign up for something, it'll go straight to your Google Calendar. Let's see here. Can you see that?
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah. So I have 2 different views loaded here for you. So this is a teacher view. So you can see it's really simple. There's not much over here. They have a few user settings. They can decide whether they want SMS messages, for instance. The FCC requires me to have them be able to opt out of that. But so they want to request an absence, for instance. They have 2 different options here. They have a time off request, which would be, I'm sick for a day. I'm going to be at a conference for 2 days, whatever the thing is. And then they just have an off-campus notification. This tool is designed, and this really requires a culture shift for a lot of schools, because a school needs to decide that they're going to use this full time. But what this will do for you is that the administrator in the school can actually see who is on campus or off campus. If there's a fire drill, if there's a lockdown, if there's something, they can actually at one click just get to like who's off campus right now, and are they sick or are they off for another reason. But essentially, they just put in their dates. So the whole calendar has been customized. That's part of the onboarding process. Your custom calendar, the system knows what days are off. If I actually try to choose this day, it's telling me it's a school holiday. It's Thanksgiving break this week. We can't do this week. So what I'm going to do here is, let's say the 2nd. It shows me on here that my absence is going to be 1 day. If I were to extend this over to the next week, it automatically tells you it's 7 calendar days, but there's actually only 5 work days that you're going to be missing. So the system is smart enough to know sort of what your calendar has set up. It doesn't charge you for weekends. And then it gives, when I create this request, I can select a reason, let's say work related, and I'll say that I'm going to be at a conference in San Antonio. I can choose whether I want to sub for this or not. Maybe I am not a teacher. Maybe I'm actually a staff member and I don't teach. So I'm not going to check this box. And then I submit the request, and that request is going to actually go through. I'll show you now what it looks like for the supervisor. So this is a supervisor dashboard. Let me actually refresh this. The supervisor dashboard, they can see that here it shows up now. Test teacher has a conference in San Antonio, and I can approve or deny it. If I hit deny, it's going to ask me why, so I can give them a reason. Do I want to count it against their PTO or not? I'll just leave this in pending for now, because you can actually see the PTO balances here. It shows you each of the users. So let's see, the test teacher should be this one right here. So it shows you on here that what's allocated. So it lets me set how many PTO days I get for the year, how many I've used, how many are pending. And actually that didn't update yet. That should be at 1 because that teacher has one up top. And then how many they've used, right? If you look at PTO from this side, this is the teacher. So it loads their PTO balance. Right now, it shows that they actually have 2 that are pending. So that supervisor dashboard's not showing those yet. But it shows them they have 11 days. It's really nice because a lot of times as a staff member, you kind of don't remember how many days you have left for these, days you can take off. Every school, every district has different rules for how you can and can't take PTO. It also lets you have blackout dates. So this is a really good one for the private schools. Independent schools a lot of times will have rules where, say, this week the whole week is off for Thanksgiving. Last Friday, for instance, might be a blackout day for PTO. If you request a day off during there, it's a big warning that'll show up in the system saying your PTO does not work for this. You're at risk of not getting paid for this day. So it lets you create sort of these exception days as well. But so you can look at the subbing piece here. So they have a department that they're in and a name, and the teacher can't change these things. Whereas from the administrator side, they can request a sub and they can actually say, I want to submit this for someone else. And they can find an English department and they can find a teacher, whoever is in that department, and create an absence for that person. Let's go back to the teacher. So this is back to the teacher view here. They would just select a date. When do you want to be absent? Let's see here. I think December 9th sounds good. And you'll see it found on there that day is a Tuesday, and that's a block day. If I choose another day, it can choose, that looks like it's a block A week. Oh, here you go. That Wednesday is a regular day. So it shows you, it updates, it shows you that Wednesday you got all 8 periods plus advisory plus lunch. And you may or may not need coverage for those things, but it gives you the option to say whether you do or not. So let's do this day, whatever this Wednesday. Reason for absence. I think I chose a different day than I reported my absence for. One of the benefits of pressing the I need a sub button when you're doing the absence, because then you can remember to do the same day. Let's see, conference in, I don't know, Chicago. And I can, if I have one room, a lot of teachers say like, hey, I'm in A123 is my room number, but maybe I'm a specialist. Maybe it's an elementary school and I'm like on a cart, I'm in 4 different rooms. If I select different periods, each period that I select adds a new block down here. So, and I'll select, say, period 3, and now there's a period 3 block. I can put in notes for what I need the sub to know in the room. So the notes would go here, notes for the sub, lesson plans, whatnot, and then the room. So maybe this one's A321, and then this one is actually A123. And then I've got more notes for this other class. Let's see what else I got here. Oh, I can upload files. So if I so choose, I can upload as many files as I want. If I have lesson plans, if I have a PowerPoint presentation I want to upload, there's no limit on what you can upload here. And then you've got this share section here where, let's say I'm an English teacher and I actually want to share this with my internal teachers. Maybe somebody can pick up one of my classes for me. If I click the English department, it's going to send it to everyone who's in my English department. But I can also say, I want to share with my preferred substitutes. And in this case, let's say maybe I work in a big school and I've got these teachers. Let's see, find another English teacher on here. Benito Thatcher. There we go. Those three, maybe those are my homies that are like right on my floor in my pod. And those are the ones that I always want to share with. I can actually save this as a group for the future and call this like my English pod homies. And then I can save the group. And so the next time I go through, if I get rid of these, then the next time I go through and I want to say, hey, I want to share with preferred substitutes, I now have my English pod homies, 3 members, and it loads them in automatically. So then it will communicate these absences or these periods that you need filled specifically to those people. This also lets you choose outside subs. And that is something that's up to the school, whether or not the teachers get to choose which outside subs, or if the teachers can communicate with outside subs. That was a lot. Sorry. This is drinking from a fire hose for you here, but with the outside sub part. So what you just saw were internal subs, right? People who work in the building. This is much more of the independent school model. Independent schools typically, not all of them, but typically will try to fill internally first, and then outside subs are sort of a last resort. Public schools are usually the opposite. They usually will try and, this is from my knowledge, and go ahead and jump in if you think differently from this, but there are so many school districts and so many schools that, this is bound to be wrong for some places. But if it's the case that the outside sub is sort of the first choice, the system can be set up so that teachers have a little bit different access to who they're sharing, who the teachers can share with. Now, let me tell you, there are 2 ways for you to use this platform. It was designed to be used like this, where this teacher, this demo teacher, every teacher is in the system and they can request absences, they can request subs, they can interact with the system. There is a version of this where only the administrator is playing quarterback and no one really knows about this platform. The platform will automatically email and text all the people that they're trying to get a hold of. For instance, if I check these 3 teachers off, they're going to get an email. Even if they don't use the system, they're still going to get the email that says, hey, I'd like you to know about this, subbing opportunity that's coming up. Or if I went ahead and signed them up for one, I can actually put people into those classes. So I'll show you what that looks like. This is a dangerous button right here, share with all faculty. It turns red because that's 100, in this case, 124 faculty members. So you can also disable that. But I'm going to submit the request and then go back to, let's look at available signups. You'll notice also with the administrator, there's a lot of stuff over here for them to look at, right? The teacher interface is much more simple. The administrators get a lot more to look at here. So let's look at available signups. It shows this calendar. And what day did I put that on? Those 2 were on this Wednesday, the 10th. If I click on it, it shows me that there are the sub roles here, period 1 and 3. Those are the ones I just created. And then it's telling me that I can choose whether or not I want this automatically getting added to my Google Calendar. I will say Google and their permissions make it impossible for me to elect to add something to someone else's calendar, even if it's an org-wide calendar. So I can't add something to someone else's calendar, but in the email that they get, there is an add to your calendar button. So they can add it on their own side. But from the system admin role, if you're just quarterbacking for everybody here, you can actually just slot people in. I can even do my outside subs in here. And maybe I want my test outside sub to be the sub to get it. I can confirm that and it won't actually add to the Google Calendar. It'll ask them to add it to their own calendar. But do you have any questions so far? Is this making sense?
Yes, it is making a lot of sense. So one of the things that I kind of want to go back to that I found was a highlight of this is I remember when I was in the classroom, when I first started many years ago, it was a very interesting system that you would have to call in by phone, and then you put in a code, and then you request a sub for certain days. And then obviously that gets queued. What I love about where we're at now, and especially right now with what I see here through Relief Roster, is I absolutely loved that now those favorite subs that I had that would come in that I knew were dependable, that either knew some of the skills or had some of that knowledge of what it is that I was teaching, to be able to at least be able to provide some oversight on what the students are doing and still be able to provide some help. I think that being able to group them, and like you mentioned, like these are my pod homies or my substitute homies or however you want to label them. And you can put those 2, 3, 4 subs in there that when you put in your job, you can go ahead and select them and then it would just go straight to them. I think that that is something that is fantastic because I know that every teacher out there has had at one moment that one particular sub that they really want, that they want to rely on, for
Yeah.
whatever it is that they're out. And I think that this is a great way to be able to do that and make it so easy. The other thing that I love too is just the customize how easily and customizable your absence can be made, and the fact that, hey, you know what, if I'm out for a conference, I need coverage for period 1, period 3, and period 5, and you don't need coverage for that lunch or something like that. So now
Yeah.
your dashboard or your campus admin, I should say, will be able to say, hey, you know what? I've got this sub that's coming in. Mr. Mendoza's coming in to fill in for Mr. Sumrow, but Mr. Sumrow let him know that he's only needed for 1, 3, and 5. So now as an admin for that school, now I can say, hey, Mr. Mendoza, would you be able to, since you don't need anything during lunch, can you fill in for this role should something pop up, or can you be able to help us here should something pop up? And I think that that's
Mm.
something that is great because oftentimes it's always a scheduling thing. It's always like, well, it's the teacher facilitator that is in charge of getting substitutes, but then they have to manage who's coming in. They have to manage the teacher's schedule and then say, well, now I got to know that this teacher's going to be out only this period and this period. And
Yeah.
now how am I going to juggle these subs? And now I got a sub for all day, but they may not need to be here all day. So what can I do and how can I use them? And on top of that, their duties that they have to complete, as far as the teacher facilitator is concerned. So having something like this in a central location where the admin can see the dashboard, now the scheduling should be a lot easier, and you're able to maximize the usage of your substitute rather than, well, now they're just here, and I mean, if we don't need them, what can we use them for depending on the skill sets that they have, or do we just send them home? And so now
Yeah.
I like that now you have intention behind the use of that substitute.
So the school actually has the option in the setup here. Like
Mhm.
this is the system setup piece. It's way down here towards the bottom, but there is a right here in the management roles require outside subs to accept a full day. So if I have
Mm.
periods 2, 3, 4, and 5, what I don't want as an administrator is to have them like cherry pick a couple of random periods and leave me hanging for the other ones. So you don't have to set it up this way, but you can set it up so that they
Mhm.
cannot sign up for like if it's one teacher, they can't sign up for they have to sign up for all of them or none of them. So that's also another piece of setup here for them. I wanted to actually show you as we were going. I thought of this as you were talking because this is the teacher view and this is the request a sub page again.
Mhm.
Okay, one thing I skipped over. You can create these additional information buckets in here. So here's a random one that a lot of schools might want. Do you have any AV needs? If you can put as many of these in here as you want, as long as you are aware that they're going to show up for every teacher that requests a sub. But there might be questions like where do you keep your keys for your classroom? Is there an emergency contact? Is there, what students have special needs that we should know about or
And
anything? And if you don't answer it, then it doesn't show up for the sub. You can actually make these required though too. So that's just another piece that trying to make this as customizable as possible for schools. That was my biggest issue with the big box, like the out of the box solutions for substitute teaching management up until this point have been completely inflexible. And they're great. They have a lot of features to them, but if you don't fit that context, that it doesn't really work for you, or you are trying to change your context and the way that you work to wrap around a piece of software. Software needs to be the opposite. It needs to wrap around your needs, right? And that's the thinking here. And to be fair, this is still a fairly new platform. And the people who are on board with me right now, they freaking love this process because they are helping me basically build out features. And look, I've been in 7 different schools on 5 continents. There are like no-brainers, these duh things that a school will be like, what if it did this? I'm like, you're so right. How did I not see that? How did I not know that was a thing? And so I only say that to say this, which is that the schools that are on board right now, the early adopters, they are literally getting to help me to build in new and awesome features. If you and I had this meeting 3 months ago, you wouldn't see half these features. Like, this is what I do when I can't sleep and I'm up late at night. I'm like, hey, X, Y, and Z head of school wrote to me and said, I'd really like to be able to have this thing. The last thing I put in there actually was for a head of school who loves the product, but said, I'm getting killed here because my outside subs are able to just cherry pick and do the one class, right? And so I was like, oh, that's awesome. I will make it so that you can select to not have them do that. So, I mean, there are 2 more buckets here that you haven't seen. So this is really the sort of overview of the absence and the subbing. I don't know if you want to see the volunteer piece or kind of what that looks like.
Yes,
or
yes.
The HR part is actually the most simple. But one thing you might have noticed on this other screen here, I have the ability to give multiple roles to a single person. So I can actually look at this as a volunteer manager. It takes a second to switch over, but once this user, same email, same everything, right? It's the exact same user, but it has multiple roles. And now you'll see these are changed. These are very volunteer based. So this guy, that's me, can look at the volunteer dashboard, right? Here's the pending registrations that I talked about. This is the onboarding process. So I've got the configuration of the onboarding process. I can change it however I want. But then I click for details, and here is my person that this came in from a form that I created. So, and then I can look at their checklist as well. If I click that, now I'm looking at the checklist. Hey, fingerprints were completed on this date. There could have been a file uploaded here. It would show up if there was a file upload. Orientation session, required training, identity verification, emergency contact, volunteer handbook received. Did they sign the thing that we need them to sign? Did they do the safeguarding? Whatever your context is in your school or your district, it can be customized here. But then in the volunteer directory, you can see this is the communications bucket in here. It lets you do like custom template emails here that you can create to send out to people. I can look at the history of the messages I've sent out. You could do a last minute, hey, this thing's been canceled. Wanted to make sure everybody knew about it. You can communicate, or I mean, pretty unlimited with the number of things you can do here. But let's see, on the events, I can create an event in here in the system. I could say like, hey, this is our fundraiser gala at this location, date, start time, end time, description. This was actually set up for a church, so that you're seeing this is very like churchy language that's on here, but you can customize all of this. Let's say, I can say I need somebody with AV and does like greeting and hospitality. This is the person who's going to be the contact point. I can create it for multiple days. So that like maybe every Thursday there's at the food bank, we have this one, like the food pantry restocking at the Houston Food Pantry. I created this one and I wanted it every Thursday. And so I created a whole bunch of them at once. And each one is tracking how many volunteers have signed up for that event. They can edit the events. But then on the volunteer dashboard, sorry, scrolling here, there's this URL right here. So this isn't going to show local. I'm just running this off my local server. But this would say like yourschool.reliefroster.com/volunteer-register. And that would not be on there, but, that would be customized. You would paste that in and it would give you the what do you call it? Sorry, the onboarding form. So I've got the onboarding form set up here. You can go through and say like, here's all the options that I want for skills, relevant experience. I can make them required fields. I can get rid of them. I can do custom fields in here, whatever I want. And then I've got settings. So I have it set up right now to require an access code. If they access it, they have to type something in. So I'm not getting like Russian bots spamming me with 10,000 applications at once. So you have your pending registrations, and then they go into active volunteers. And here are all of your volunteers. You're going, look at that. Robbie Cobbs, there's our guy. Let's see what he's good at. So look, he's in Luquillo, Puerto Rico, where it's actually true. So here's all the things he does. Apparently he loves worship music, Sunday services. This is like for a church example.
Yeah.
But then I can say like, hey, I've got this event coming up and I want to find out who does what. I mentioned food service earlier. Let's do food service. Oh, what do you know? It's Kyle and Lindsay. That's my wife and I, and we have owned 2 restaurants. So we definitely show up in the food service section. But yeah, so you can search by skills, you can filter, and you can communicate right from here. So if I'm looking at this guy, I can look at their onboarding checklist, I can edit, or I can email or call from here, straight from the platform. Yeah. So yeah, and then that's basically it. They can see, hang on here, available events. So here would be like a calendar that they might look at. They would see, this is, if I was looking at this as a volunteer, this is what they would see. They click on that date. Hey, there's a thing. There's 10 spots remaining. Houston Food Pantry. One thing that's cool about this too is that I can actually, sorry about that. I can actually sign up. So I'm a system administrator for this district, and I am looking at the volunteer thing, and I can go in here and say, you know what? I think I'm actually going to sign up for this, right? Here's my phone number, confirm sign up. Awesome. Guess where else that just went? That went to my Google Calendar, because I have it set up so that anytime I sign up for something, by the way, my Google Calendar is a hot mess because there's so much relief roster test stuff in there. But yeah, so basically that's the volunteer piece as well. And we wanted to make sure that schools were able to have all of these components in one place. The cool thing about this is the role-based part. So I can have somebody who is my volunteer manager, and maybe that's a teacher or an administrator that takes over that role. Maybe that's a parent that takes over that role. The system is set up so that you can have whoever you want. You can elect for whoever you want to be in charge of the subbing, the volunteering, the HR piece. So yeah, not sexy, but very helpful.
No, like this is like so useful. Like I was just thinking and wrapping my brain around everything. Just that volunteer piece alone, just oftentimes, again, as teachers, it's like, here, let me send the paper home, or let me send a reminder message. Parents who are looking for volunteers, but the fact that you could already vet those volunteers, there's a form, there's things there that you require of them, and now you can go into that pool of volunteers. I mean, and one thing that I like is that, yes, maybe it's an event for 5th graders, but those are all still your community. So maybe if there was a parent that is like, let's say, a 4th grade parent, but wants to see what their kid is going to go into 5th grade and things of that sort, they're involved. And then they're involved in your learning community. They're involved in your school. And when there's that buy-in, I think that's something that is fantastic too, because they're part of that community. And I love that setup, because then you're looking for, hey, we're doing our carnival event. We need somebody that's going to be here just to take tickets, and we're looking for volunteers to watch this.
Put fawns in the dunk tank. That's what I'm hearing.
Things of that sort. And I think that's something that's great, that you're encompassing not only just the substitute aspect of it, but also the volunteer aspect, and just the level of communication, I think, is so streamlined. Because I tell you what, sometimes I'll get messages on my phone, and that same message that's on my phone comes into my email. And then it comes in like 3 times in my email, 2 times on my phone. And I'm like, what's going on here? So with this, it's the people that are involved will get those messages, and then they can volunteer, they can accept, then you've got the sub aspect of it. I love that this now is high level, where you get the dashboard where HR can see what's going on too as well. You've got that admin dashboard too as well. And then just whether it's your CTO, CIO, whoever's going to be in charge of that really high level, has analytics and is able to see what's going on here. Are there any trends? Do we need any more subs? What kind of subs are being asked for most? Is there a specific subject? What can we look for? And then this way you can go and advertise and say, hey, we're looking for, specific subs that have this particular skill set.
There's a whole analytics bucket in there that I didn't show you. So you can, one thing that's cool too is like from a building level or a district level, you can actually figure out why people are missing work, because they have to give you a reason. So it's logging stats on, a lot of times in schools will say things like, I feel like Jim's missing a lot. or he's off campus a lot or something. But a lot of times we don't have the data because we're not collecting it in the right ways. And we're not making it easily accessible for the right people. So one of the goals of this is for an administrator to be able to see who's gone and why, and say like, it looks like, Jim has gone to 5 conferences this year and missed a lot of school. So, maybe we should have a chat with Jim about what our expectations are around, and that's a silly example because obviously the administrator's got to approve those, but it is nice to have the information, and it tracks also one of the things that I didn't show you on the supervisor dashboard. Whenever, if the school's using it to track off campus, like I've got a dentist appointment, I'm not missing class, I don't need a sub, I'm not absent for the day, but you want to know that teacher's gone. If you are using that, it also is tracking how many hours people are gone and what their reasons are for being gone. So if you're like, Jim's not reporting a lot of absences, but he seems to like be gone. Every time I come to his classroom, he's not there. If you can just pop in there and say, actually, it looks like Jim's got like this standing meeting that he's doing like twice a week where he's off campus for an hour or something. I'm not saying your administrators don't already know about that type of stuff, but to have the data that tells you, like, when I talk to Jim, I can say, hey, look, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing real data here that shows exactly what you've been up to. And that's not a gotcha. It's really like, as an administrator, you don't know what you don't know sometimes. And to be able to make data-driven decisions, you need data.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for today. And thank you so much for sharing Relief Roster with us. And I think, honestly, like this is something that feels, well, number one, the interface and user experience that I'm seeing is, it just seems so clean, so easy, so customizable too as well, which I think is a huge plus with a lot of the platforms that are out there that are kind of trying maybe to do the same thing, or different systems that might be in place, but they kind of have to go through a certain progression and only certain people get to see stuff and all of that. But I think that this is great. Like, it really does feel like we talked about in the beginning or during the warm up. It was just like, this does feel like that one-stop shop where everything that you need gets done. And like you just mentioned right now, those analytics, being able to, know, like you said, understanding and knowing what you may not know. But for me, the big win for me is just, number one, being able to, if I'm a teacher, I can select from my favorite subs and just have them into that group and say, okay, one out of these 3 is going to hit, but I know that they're going to be good. I know that they're going to be good, and I know that I can trust them. So it'll get
Yeah.
sent. And so I love that as that teacher aspect. But the volunteer, I think that that's huge too, because to me, I think it's oftentimes is, there are many parents that, not necessarily that they don't know, they don't want to volunteer, but again, going back to, I don't know what I didn't know, but now with something like this, sending it out to parents and parents filling it in and saying, wow, I want to be part of this and just be part of the community. And then for me, it's that buy-in. Parents are there, you've got your stakeholders there, their kids go there. Now it's like, hey, they're vested in you, and they'll go and volunteer.
Fonz, did you know about our equity-based pricing for software?
No,
with
no,
Tech
no,
My
no.
School. So that's one of the things that's really interesting, and Relief Roster is a participant in this. We have other, like Flint is a great example. Buying Flint through us, we're able to give discounts because we're a nonprofit. We're able to help companies to write down certain expenses and things, like, because they can donate to us. One of the ways we do that is equity-based pricing on software. And what that looks like is essentially, the more underserved your community and the less you charge for tuition for the independent schools and international schools, the lower your tuition, the bigger the discounts we give you. And that goes all the way to, some of the schools are the most underserved, underprivileged, really, really rough areas that they serve, or, and they do not have the funding for this kind of stuff. We have made these products completely affordable, a lot of them. So this one, for example, I don't have the numbers in front of me. That was dumb that I didn't think to bring them with me. But if you're in a position where you charge such a low amount of tuition because your clients can't afford it, your students' families can't afford it anymore, we've got all the way down to where the product is almost free for schools like that. And we're actually subsidizing So from the wealthiest schools and districts to the ones that are hurting the most, there's like a whole continuum of pricing. So we call it equity based because we believe that technology has the ability to really shrink the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And unfortunately, we've not honored the fact that software is not expensive to operate. It's a really natural product to be able to discount by need. If I made a car and I was selling a car, they're going to all cost me the same, whether I sell them to a rich person or a poor person, right? So, but the software is not the case, right? So one of the things I love about being in this position where I own this piece of software, one thing I love about it is that I'm able to help people who need it the most. The people who need more time on their hands, who don't need to be worrying about where this, how the subbing is happening. I can buy some of that time back for them and ultimately serve kids in that way. So
Nice.
one other thing I would say is that how much time people spend on this process of figuring out who's gone, who needs subs, who's subbing where. The process oftentimes is being handled by an administrator who has far more important things to be doing with their time than this type of like data chasing. Schools that are more well-resourced usually have a person for this, but if you don't have a person to do that, and even if you do, I mean, really, we're just talking about efficiency here. This whole thing is all about keeping track of all the different components of this process, from onboarding to execution. But yeah, just creating efficiencies in systems is, at this point with technology, is a no-brainer. And I want to make sure that schools can afford it.
Love it. Awesome, Kyle. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing, this wonderful, wonderful platform, Relief Roster. We'll definitely link it in the show notes. Now, I know I didn't get to send you the closing questions here, but I don't know if you saw Robbie's episode. I always end the show with 3 questions, so
Okay.
I might be putting you on the spot here. But
Let's do it.
all right, here we go. So now, question number 1. Every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. So we know that for Superman, kryptonite was his weakness. So I want to ask you, Kyle, in your experience and from that you can think of the many years in education and even until now, what would you say would be your edu kryptonite?
That's an easy one. Toxic attitudes.
Okay.
I have worked with all kinds of different people across this whole spectrum of education. When people are kind and understanding and seek to listen and understand before being heard and understood, and people are just kind. I mean, it comes down to kindness. So people who are not kind, that's my kryptonite. Those are the people that drive me nuts.
All right, good answer. All right, question number 2. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Wow. A billboard with anything on it. I would probably just stick with that same messaging. Be kind.
Yeah, good answer. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, last question. All right, if you could trade places with a single person for a day, who would that be and why?
Do I still get to be married to my wife? Because that's a non-starter for me if I had to not have her. Gosh, one person for a day. I don't know. I don't know that I would trade with anybody, honestly. Like, I don't mean to. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would trade with anybody. I can't think of anyone who's got a life that's more interesting to me than the one that I lead.
That is a wonderful, honest, genuine answer. I will definitely take that. You are, in 5+ years, you are the only person that has ever said, I would not switch or trade with anybody. And that's not a bad thing, Kyle. I love it. And I think that that's something that is fantastic. And it says a lot about you and the person that you are. And obviously, even myself, just listening to you in the very beginning, I didn't know the bus driver part. I didn't know the Berkeley part. And then I didn't know just how you landed into education. And then all of a sudden you're doing international schools. And I think that that is something fantastic and very unique that you have a lens that nobody else can have and that nobody else can take away from you because you've
Yeah,
been there,
thanks.
you've lived it. And I think that that is a great and wonderful answer, Kyle. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks. I thought of a better billboard. I
All
think I
right.
would just say stay curious. I think
Nice.
curiosity drives everything I love about education comes back to curiosity, right? And I think like if you look at the circuitous route that my career has taken, it's all marked by curiosity. It's like, what would it be like to drive a bus, you know? And I've ticked that box now, but like I feel the same way about so many different things, you know, like the night sky blows my mind, but so does the inner workings of a complex machine like a school. I love, yeah, I love finding out new things. I like
They
knowing what I don't know.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kyle. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for, reaching out. And I'm just really thankful that we got to connect again.
Yeah,
And
likewise.
hopefully we'll be connecting this coming year also as well. Looking forward to Tech My School conference. I think it's going to be something that's going to be fantastic. As always, Robbie and the gang, and, getting to see you there. And just there's so much great things happening in Puerto Rico, thanks to Tech My School. So thank you for being on the show. And for all our audience members, please make sure that you connect with Kyle on the show. Make sure you connect with Kyle. We will definitely link his information in the show notes. Please make sure that you do check out Relief Roster as well. And again, you can connect with Kyle. Also,
Mm.
if you have any more questions or if you will decide to work with Kyle, he will definitely be somebody that is helpful to you. But again, thank you as always. And to all our sponsors, appreciate you, EduAid, Book Creator, Yellow Dig, and Peelback Education, again, for sponsoring our show. And if you're interested in sponsoring our show, please make sure that you reach out to us because this new year's coming up and we've got some big things planned. So thank you as always for all of your support. And my friends, as always, don't forget, stay techie.